Before the War on Terror, the United States actively pursued a massive Central Asian energy prize, a direct route for Turkmen natural gas. This map shows Turkmenistan, a former Soviet republic, sitting on an absolute gold mine. The data here tracks an estimated 101 trillion cubic feet of proven natural gas reserves, gas that can be extracted profitably using current technology, concentrated mostly in the southeast of the country. To get that gas to Western markets, energy companies faced a massive geographical trap. Routing pipelines north through Russia meant paying exorbitant transportation fees, and pushing west through Iran was politically impossible. A southern route straight through Afghanistan and into Pakistan was the only viable, cost-effective option. In March 1995, an American energy giant named Unocal made its move. They approached the Turkmen government with a proposal to construct a 48-inch pipeline across that route at an estimated cost of $1.9 billion. Unocal wasn't the only company competing for the route. An Argentinian firm named Bridas already had an exclusive arrangement to develop those fields. But backed by the promise of heavy U.S. investment, Unocal convinced the Turkmen president to sign a new deal with them. To show his support, the president arbitrarily banned Bridas from exporting oil from their own established fields, causing Bridas to retaliate with a $15 million lawsuit against Unocal for interference. With the northern end of the route locked down, the corporate interests of Unocal and the United States government became completely aligned. Both groups' ambitions now hinged entirely on whoever controlled the ground in Afghanistan. In September 1996, the Taliban successfully captured the Afghan capital of Kabul. Instead of distancing themselves from the militant takeover, representatives from Unocal, alongside U.S. congressmen and State Department officials, rushed to embrace the new regime. At this exact time, the Taliban was enforcing severe and repressive rules. They banned women from the workplace, including hospitals, prohibited girls from attending schools, mandated the full-body burqa, and allowed religious police to subject citizens to public beatings for minor infractions. Despite these abuses, the Clinton administration actively pursued good relations. In a closed-door United Nations session in 1996, U.S. diplomats defended the Taliban, arguing that it was not in America's interest that the group be isolated. The internal justification was entirely pragmatic. One American diplomat noted that the Taliban would probably develop much like the Saudis. The working logic was that with pipelines and an emir in place, the United States could tolerate strict religious laws in exchange for energy infrastructure. In December 1997, Unocal invited Taliban ministers to the United States for industry talks. These hardline fundamentalists were put up in five-star hotels and hosted for a lavish dinner at the palatial Texas home of a Unocal vice president. The ministers were chauffeured in company minibuses, given VIP tours of the Houston Zoo, and granted special access to the NASA Space Center. Unocal even donated $900,000 to the University of Omaha to set up a school in Kandahar to train Afghan locals in the skills needed to lay the pipeline. The U.S. government deliberately traded its moral stance on human rights to keep the deal alive. Assistant Secretary of State Robin Raphael actively lobbied the Taliban on behalf of the Unocal-led consortium, placing a unified pipeline route firmly above democratic values. Human rights violations were ignored, and so was the booming opium trade. The Taliban derived millions of dollars in annual taxes from drug crops. As long as the CentGas pipeline deal looked viable, the U.S. actively shielded the regime from international scrutiny over its skyrocketing opium production. This alliance began to fracture in August 1998. The U.S. launched cruise missiles at suspected terrorist camps following the embassy bombings in East Africa, and Unocal officially suspended its pipeline activities. But behind the scenes, Unocal had already balked because the Taliban were demanding over $100 million a year in rent, plus the construction of local roads and power lines. Even with Unocal stepping back, the pursuit of Central Asian oil persisted. When George W. Bush took office, his team privately continued to treat the Taliban as a stabilizing force. In early 2001, a Taliban envoy met with officials from both the CIA and the State Department in Washington to keep negotiations alive. By the summer of 2001, the negotiations reached their breaking point. The U.S. handed the Taliban a final ultimatum to form a coalition government and cooperate. They were told they could either accept an American offer of a carpet of gold, or they would be buried under a carpet of bombs. When diplomatic bribery and financial incentives failed to secure the energy route, the United States explicitly pivoted to the threat of total military destruction. The bombs fell shortly after that ultimatum. The Taliban regime was ousted from power, leaving a massive political vacuum in Afghanistan. In the aftermath, the United States heavily influenced the selection of Hamid Karzai as the interim leader of Afghanistan. Karzai had served as a military liaison for the CIA in the 1980s, but crucially, he had also worked as a paid consultant for Unocal. President Bush then appointed Zalmay Khalilzad as his special envoy to Afghanistan. Khalilzad was another former Unocal consultant, one who had previously written policy papers explicitly arguing that the U.S. should engage with the Taliban to ensure the construction of oil and gas pipelines. By February 2002, just months after the initial invasion, Hamid Karzai and the Pakistani president were already holding formal meetings in Islamabad, openly agreeing to revive the exact same CentGas pipeline project. The appointment of former Unocal consultants to lead the post-invasion government allowed the CentGas pipeline project to resume within months of the Taliban's fall. In this landscape of petropolitics, corporate energy profits consistently outranked human rights and democratic values. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the hidden history of the Unocal affair. If you found this breakdown insightful, please make sure to like, subscribe to the Bookish Breakdown, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on pipeline politics. Until next time, stay curious.